Welcome back to MVM. Today I've got a brand new game on the table. This one is called Avalonia from Farside Games. Now, this is kind of an unusual theme for a board game, I would say. This is kind of a dudes on the map area control style game that takes place in an apocalyptic Mad Max style world. Now, when I say Mad Max style, I'm not talking the shiny and chrome, driving cars high speed through the desert. I'm talking about the mutated population of warlords that is controlling everything and basically subjugating what's left of humanity. You're playing as one of those groups of mutant warlords. So you can kind of expect everything you'd expect from that. The idea of like farming humans, taking their blood and actually using it as a resource in the game. So due to some of those themes, this is definitely, I would consider, more of an adult game. I'm going to be careful here in this video. I'm not going to show anything that might be sensitive. However, know that this is almost like a horror mixed with that apocalyptic scenario. There's a lot of monsters and things that you'd expect to see straight out of nightmares in this game, which I think is really cool. It makes for a very cool, unique game, but I do know that that's not for everybody. So I wanted to kind of give that caveat before I started actually talking about the game. But this does something a little unique. It's not just, okay, it's Mad Max. No, they've actually taken the concepts of King Arthur and the Round Table, and you're actually seeing that in the Avalonia. So what happened is this mythical version of King Arthur kind of went crazy and like was wiping out the world. So he was locked away in a tower. Now he's slowly kind of regaining his energy in there by absorbing the blood of humans, and he's slowly becoming more powerful, and eventually he will come back out of that tower and destroy the rest of the world, like completely obliterate the rest of the world, and that's the end of the game. Now you might be working towards that, because if you have the most victory points, at the end of the game, you're the winner. You're deemed the winner by King Arthur. Of course, he's going to wipe out the whole world anyway, but you're going to see that flavor of Avalon through this entire game, and like the different factions you're playing, some of the names of the characters. In fact, I've got Gawain right here, which was one of the Knights of the Round Table, and the Green Knight, who you might be familiar with in the stories. And these factions all serve different roles. Of course, you're all mutants, you're all trying to subjugate humanity, you're all kind of doing terrible things and violent things to each other, of course. But some of these are more in favor of King Arthur, and some of these are more against his regime. So that being said, every one of these factions is actually different. You're going to have a different set of heroes. You're going to have different sets of units. You've got three: your basic unit, your armored unit, and your advanced unit. You're going to have different costs and strengths for these units, and different heroes that might come into play, and a unique deck of action cards. And this game is all driven by these cards. You're going to be playing 2 cards every round and taking a variety of actions every single round until the game is over. Now, I do have the board set up already here for 3 players, and you're going to see that I've placed the 3 faction headquarter tiles already down and populated them with the starting units of every faction. Now, these green tokens that you see floating around on the board, those represent human hives. That's where the humans are kind of hiding out. Your goal is to conquer those human hives and control them, controlling the population of humanity and earning victory points as you do. You're also going to have these weird monsters that are roaming around the Wasteland. These are called blood traders, and they're going to be able to produce blood for you. Blood is what you're going to use to do research over the course of the game. You're collecting this blood, and it almost acts as an income. You're going to get a certain number of blood tokens every round, and then you can spend these blood tokens to bring out new units and supply your board in different ways. So that's all happening here on the main board. Everyone has their player board in front of them, where you're going to be able to place your current actions you're taking and hold your past actions, because you can't just cycle the same actions over and over again. It also tells you your current hero and all the costs to bring out everything on your board. Now, you are going to have 3 heroes per faction, and you're going to randomly shuffle these in order to place your current hero on the top. If something happens to this hero, you'll have to summon the next one in line. So you will ultimately have 3 different heroes that you can place on the board, represented by these hero miniatures that you're seeing right now. Now, off to the side, you're going to have King Arthur himself sitting in his tower with his army of artifact soldiers. These artifact soldiers can actually be loaned out to players, and they can take control of these artifacts and place them on the battlefield under their control. Underneath that, you're going to have a row of cards available to purchase. These will supplement the action cards that come in your starting hand, allowing you to take better actions. So you can almost think of this as a deck builder a little bit. There's that mechanic there of upgrading these starting cards. And then below that, you're going to have the score tracker that keeps track of everybody's score. Now, I've talked a lot about these action cards, but let's talk about how they actually are being used. You're going to play 2 cards every round, and you're going to play them on top of each other. And you'll notice that each card has 2 halves. You're going to place them in such a way that when you flip them over, you've got one card showing both of its actions and one card just showing its bottom action. You're doing this to present 3 possible actions. And you can do this in any combination with your cards in such a way that you are taking 3 actions a turn. Now, this card is also going to determine your initiative. And you'll see at the top an initiative number, which you're going to add together with your clan's initiative. And that's kind of just like a tiebreaker. You've got an order number there that's going to determine who would go first if you played the exact same initiative. But when it is your turn, you're going to get to do all the actions that are showing there on your 2 different cards. You're always going to do these actions from top to bottom. You can skip an action if you don't want to do it, but you can't do actions out of order. You can't do half of an action, do the next one, and then come back to finish that first one. You have to go straight down to take your actions. Now, there are 5 different actions that you can take in the game, and each action is going to have a number attached to it. That's how many times effectively that you can do that action. So the most basic action is move, and you're going to get a number like, say, 5. That's going to let you move 5 units. Of course, moving is just taking a unit and moving them to an adjacent space. So that's 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves, and let's say 5 moves there. A unit can only move to an adjacent space, and a unit can only move once per activation. So I can't use my 5 movement to move one character 5 spaces. They can only move from one to another adjacent spot. If you would initiate a combat by moving, then you do start a combat in the space that you're moving into. Otherwise, you just resolve the move and then you move on to the next action in your list. Now, you could start an attack by moving in, which is going to start a combat, or you could actually attack with your attack cards. And then the attack card is going to tell you how many units you can attack with. So if you're moving into an area where you only have 2 units, for example, and the enemy has a bunch of units, you might want to be careful because you can only activate those 2 units. Of course, as the game goes and progresses, you might be getting stronger and stronger units, which means you're actually going to be able to activate stronger units every time. So if this is my situation and I'm fighting in a combat here, I can activate my 2 strongest units and see how many hits they do. Combat is completely deterministic in this game. You're not going to see dice rolls or even action cards or anything that can be played to influence combat. You're simply looking at the values of these characters versus the values of your opponent. Now, some of these special cards might have abilities like armor, which prevents hits and things like that, but you can reference everybody's card to see how that actually affects the game. Whenever you do a hit, you simply remove one of the enemy's figures from the board. They get to choose which enemy is removed. So in this case, if I'm attacking with my advanced unit and my armor unit, I'm doing a total of 3 hits, so I could remove up to 3 enemies. You can kind of do the math. You can look at what you're doing, how much damage you're doing. You could look at your opponent's sheet and see how much defensive capability they have before you're deciding if you're going to use those cards to attack. And again, if you have multiple attack cards, you can make multiple attacks even with the same units. But you can't use the same unit twice with one card. So if I have an attack 3, I can't use one unit twice and the other one once. It doesn't work that way. You need to have 3 units. If you're not doing enough to make a whole number, so if I'm attacking with these 3, it's actually 3.5 damage. It's just 3 damage. So that deterministic combat can allow you to make strategic decisions when moving and also when determining that attack. The next action is research. That brings you over here to the King Arthur board. And you're going to see the number of cards here. I already mentioned you can take one of these cards and place it into your deck. You'll notice that one of these cards is flipped the other direction. That's to determine the number there on the top. And that's going to determine how these blood traders move at the end of the round. So you might want to buy a card from that slot just to get it out of there and maybe get a different movement card in. But generally, you're looking at the cards that give you a better ability. And all 5 actions are represented on these cards. A lot of these cards are going to give you 2 actions to take with the top part, so you can kind of decide what's better for your strategy when taking these cards. Every time you take a card, everything else is going to slide down, rotating if it needs to, and then it's going to be the farthest away card that gets replaced. The 4th action is harvest, and that's going to let you harvest blood from these blood traders here. And like I just mentioned, these are going to be moving around the board based on that card, so you can kind of plan out where they might be going next turn. But your goal is to get into that area and capture that area, hold that area captive basically having the most presence there, that means you control the blood trader and you can harvest from it. Every blood trader is going to have a number of these humans inside of it that can be harvested. You're going to be adding more of these over the course of the game. There can be up to 3 in each head, basically. You'll take these, you'll get rid of them, and you'll replace them with cubes that you're going to be placing on your side of the board. You'll notice that these numbers, when you're placing these cubes, start to escalate. They start at 3, it goes all the way up to 9. This is effectively your income. So you're going to get a number of blood tokens equal to how high you get this income by doing this harvest action. You're also going to gain a number of tokens right away based on that number. So if I did a harvest 2, I'd get to take 2 blood tokens immediately and place them in my pool to then spend if I needed to. Now most of that blood is going to be spent on spawning new units, and every unit that you could spawn has a blood cost printed on it. When you're spawning units, you can spend that blood, as much blood as you have, up to that spawn number. So if I play a spawn 5 card, I could spawn up to 5 guys, but normally you're going to be seeing like spawn 2, 3, bring out like 2 or 3 guys. Normally you can only spawn units onto your HQ, and that includes possibly summoning out your heroes who have special abilities, and we'll talk about that in a second. You can potentially spawn units out where there are other basic units. For example, my basic unit says I can spawn out in the field as long as I have 2 other basic units there. So that actually lets me put them directly into the battlefield. Otherwise, they're coming out here in the HQ. Now, when you do summon your champion, you're going to have a one-time ability that you can pay for right then. If you don't do it, when you summon them, you don't get it. They do have an ongoing passive ability that's going to be in effect as long as they are out, but that other ability you have to pay for in addition to their normal cost. So these characters usually cost a lot of blood, so you're not going to be summoning them early on. You're going to be summoning them a little later into the game, but they are very strong and very good at combat. Now those are the 5 actions, but like I was saying, you're doing them in any order. You might be doing multiple different actions based on the way you're playing your cards. You could be doing a couple spawn actions in a row, a couple different harvest actions. As long as there's enough to do the action that you're trying to do, you can take it. But once you're done, you're going to take the actions that you just did and slide them over to your past. If there were already cards in past, then they actually come back to you and you can play them again. So you can't do the same actions over and over again. You have to have that one turn of kind of pause as everything is shifting over. Now, once everybody is completely done, you're going to go around the table in that initiative order. Everyone is going to do all the actions of their cards, and then you're going to go to the King Arthur phase. This is a blind bid of tribute to King Arthur. You're going to take any number of blood tokens that you have in your hand, and you're going to hold it out, like in blind bidding style, and reveal it to show how many you've bid. Whoever bids the highest is going to lose those tokens, but they're going to gain the favor of King Arthur. They're going to get one of those artifacts that they can place their base on and use as one of their characters. And this is going to go out on the board, and you're now going to control that. In addition, each one of these artifacts is going to have an ability, and you'll see that kind of slotted into the base of King Arthur. There's room for different cardboard placards that could signify different abilities that these artifacts have for different games. Whoever won the bid also gains 1 victory point as tracked down here and places 1 token on King Arthur's throne. This is representing the sacrifices that you're making to King Arthur along the way. This is how he's kind of powering himself up. And yeah, that's pretty dark. Yeah, I know that this is a very dark themed game, but he's actually drawing energy from them. And once his throne is completely full of sacrifices, that's when he actually kind of wakes up from his tower, comes down, destroys everything, and you figure out the winner of the game. Now, there is another way that you can end the game, and that's actually if one player gets all the way to 30 points before King Arthur awakens. If that happens, then that player just flat out wins. I don't want to say there's really a race element, but there is kind of, because it is possible that you could get all the way up to that 30. However, it's way more likely that King Arthur is going to wake up before somebody hits 30 points. The only way that he's not waking up after X number of turns is if somebody doesn't win that bid. If nobody bids, nobody gets the artifact, you don't put a sacrifice on King Arthur's throne, and that just kind of delays the end of the game by 1 more round. Now after that phase is the cleanup phase, where you're actually going to determine what your income looks like and how many victory points you get. First, you're going to get a number of blood tokens equal to that income tracker. Like I said, however many blood trades you've done over the course of the game and gotten those red cubes, you're going to gain the number equal to the printed value. If you haven't reached the next number, then you get the number before it, and that is yours to spend. And then you're going to calculate your victory points. And this is an area control game. Your victory points are going to come from controlling areas. You're going to get 1 point for every human hive that you control, and 2 points for every blood trader that you control. Of course, those blood traders are going to move after they're scored. You're going to see they're going to move a certain number of spaces, either following the regular arrow or possibly a double arrow. Some of these cards have that double arrow that shows they're going to move that direction. But in general, they're just going to be following those arrows around in whatever direction they're leading. You can kind of plan for this because you can see which direction they're going to be going, unless somebody buys that card and then changes it midway through the round. You know where they're going, so you can kind of get some guys in there early to wait for them, so you can at least guarantee you're going to get those 2 victory points one of the rounds. But after they've moved, that's when you're going to refresh. You're going to add 1 human to all of those blood traders. So some of these blood traders are going to get a little better as the game goes on. You'll know if something's been harvested, it's not going to have as many humans available. So you want to try to get those juicy ones. The maximum that you can ever have is 3, but getting 3 of those cubes on your income track is pretty great. So if you do see one that has 3, I think a lot of people are going to be fighting over that. And then of course you're going to continue on with everyone taking their actions again and again until one of those 2 in-game conditions is met. Whoever wins is going to be crowned King of Avalonia briefly before King Arthur just kind of raises the world again. But that's another story. That's the end of the game. So that is Avalonia. Hopefully you have a pretty good idea of what this game looks like and plays like. It definitely has that horror kind of apocalyptic vibe that permeates through the entire game. That's either going to very much appeal to you or not. I think after you've seen some of the images I've shown in this video and what these minis look like, you can decide if it's for you or not. Personally, I think it's kind of cool. I know there's definitely some people that love that dark apocalyptic theme. I think this is going to be right in your wheelhouse. So take a look at this game on its crowdfunding page. You can see what all the final components look like and what the 4th faction looks like. I didn't even show the 4th faction here because I didn't have the miniatures for it, so I didn't want to even talk about it. But there is a 4th faction that you can see on their page, and maybe more. I don't know what they're going to have when it comes to stretch goals and things like that. So definitely take a look, and please ask any questions down below. I will do my best to answer them if I can. And as always, thank you so much for watching, liking, and subscribing to us here at MVM. And until we see you again, keep having fun at the table.
Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.